Happy Monday, Liberty Kitty Cats. And guess what? You could have seen today's interview. You could have watched it live. You could have already listened to it if only you were a supporter of ours on Patreon, or now featuring another alternative on Locals. You can go over to lionsofliberty.locals.com or to join the Pride over at patreon.com/lionsofliberty. Either way, you'll get exclusive access to all sorts of live shows, including our paywalled shows like Degenerate Gamblers, Conspiracy Corner, bonus segments with guests, live editions of most, if not all, of my interviews, and so much more. Again, you can find that over at patreon.com/lionsofliberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com.
We need to empower people with not just the philosophical tools, but the inspiration to break free from the system.
Welcome to the flagship Lions of Liberty podcast, your weekly dose of education, inspiration, and real-world application from the top minds in the liberty movement.
If you want liberty, we need to be better leaders, better husbands, better fathers, better friends, better businessmen. We need to be better people.
Here's your host, your guide, your shining beacon of liberty, Marc Clair.
Live long and live free.
All right, kitty cats, I am live here, at least live for our patrons on Patreon and local, with a very special guest. He's very special because he is actually the very first guest to ever appear on this program, returning for the returning for the third time, actually. I'm pleased to welcome back Stephan Kinsella. Stephan, are you ready to roar?
I'm ready to roar. Rawr.
All right, fantastic.
Or bark.
Now,
I'm a poodle guy, so how about woof?
that I do remember that. I remember the poodle thing from last time. It's all coming back to me now.
Yeah, they're in here right now. Let's hope they don't bark.
You might get shit from some people online for being a poodle guy. Not from me. I'm just saying.
That's okay. Hey,
That
I have
might
a
be-
wife, you know. Yeah, I please
Exactly.
my wife.
That's the only one you gotta please, really, when it comes down to it.
Correct.
You don't have to please
Happy wife,
everyone on Twitter or
Happy
anything like
wife,
that.
happy life. Happy
Exactly.
libertarian is impossible. So
So, Stephan, I just want to start by kind of, I haven't really spoken to you too much since all this COVID stuff started. So I know it's been a while, but I just kind of maybe want to go back maybe 18, 20 months with you and just kind of transport yourself back into the mind of Stephan Kinsella, February, March 2020, and when all this kind of COVID stuff started happening, lockdown started coming in. I'm just curious what your mindset was, whether you want to.
that's interesting. And nowadays everything you say is dangerous because you're going to piss off someone. But I don't really care at this point.
That's
I'll
why.
tell
That's
you
why
what
you're
my
here.
thought was, and I could be wrong in reconstructing what I thought, but I'm pretty sure, and I have some people that can vouch for this. So my initial view, and I'm vaccinated, by the way, so I guess I'm a turncoat, but
You've outed yourself.
I've outed myself because I don't give a crap what anyone thinks. Because I've taken Jason Stapleton's lesson in, wealth, power, and blah, blah, blah. All these, I'm trying to categorize all you people. I can't keep you guys straight. The neo-reactionaries, the anti-political, the political, the post-libertarians, whatever. I was just talking to, what's his name? Pete Q this morning and trying to say, do you have a map to lay out the different types of people that are now? And he's like, no. I'm like,
Someone should make like a big diagram, a big flow chart.
I know. And I guarantee there's some autistic, a prioristic libertarian who's going to do.
Someone's already got it on their wall as we speak. Actually,
yeah, probably. So my initial take was I'm always a skeptic of anyone who claims to know more than they know, and so that means I'm always a skeptic of government authority and bullshit. But I'm also a skeptic of libertarians who claim to know more than they know. Like, I appreciate their skepticism, but when they go too far and they go into conspiracy la land, like Jeff Tucker was telling me, oh, it's just a cold. I'm like, I don't know. But my view is like, I think it might be, some variation of the flu or whatever the hell. But my thought was, we can't stop it. It's natural and it thins the herd. I'm not trying to be Malthusian, right? Or a eugenicist, but this is what happens to the human race and any other species over time is there's waves of problems they deal with and the strong survive and the genes get better. And I just didn't see any way to stop it. So I just thought, okay, there may be a pandemic coming and it's not going to be good. And we should just prepare for it and maybe isolate the ultra sick the best we can. And then eventually the human race will adapt to it and survive and get stronger. I mean, and we will suffer some losses, but there's nothing we can do about it. And if there's anything we can do, the cost will be way more than the disease, which turns out to be true, right? I mean, the lockdowns have hurt humanity way more than the pandemic has, I believe, because the pandemic would have happened anyway, right? So that was my view. And then, some of the libertarians started becoming anti-lockdown and all this stuff, and I was on board with it. I guess I hoped and thought it might last for 2 or 3 or 4 months. Of course, it lasted longer. I do not believe this will last forever. I know it's horrible. It's hurt a lot of people. I'm totally opposed to every lockdown, every mask measure, even voluntary, although people can do what they want voluntarily. So
even voluntary, you just mean opinion-wise in terms of masks?
No, I mean, like if a business wants to require you to wear a mask, that's their right. But I oppose even that, not as a libertarian, but just as a person who thinks it's stupid.
There can be your libertarian side that thinks it's their right to do that, and your Stephan Kinsella side that thinks that's just stupid.
I think we should never have had any mask practice at all. I think we should never have had social distancing at all. I think there should be no exhortation to get the vaccine at all. Although I actually think the vaccine probably is helpful in terms of slightly reducing your chance of dying from it. Okay, like that's what it did. And it was kind of an incredible medical thing they did. I don't know. But that's kind of my take on it. So I think we should have let it wash it. Now, I admit that I'm a total scientific ignoramus on this. So I'm just telling you my opinion. My opinion is we should have done nothing, because even if something could have been done, the government's going to make it 10 times worse is what they did. So that's my take on it. So my take on it is COVID is real, probably. It's a problem, but it's just another cyclical disease that hits the human race from time to time, and it happens and people die, and then the human race gets stronger and they move on to the next thing. I don't know what else to say. I mean, does that answer your question about my take on
right
COVID?
Or wrong?
No, there is right or wrong. It's the lockdowns and the mandates are all wrong. Every mandate is wrong. Yeah. The mandate to have a mask is wrong. The mandate to have the vaccine is wrong. The mandate to socially distance is wrong. The lockdowns are wrong. They're all wrong. And they're probably all, at least in the U.S., unconstitutional or whatever. But of course, you can see what good the Constitution does. It didn't stop it, did it?
So I'm curious, were you surprised at all? I mean, obviously it was a lot different for you being in Texas, where I was spending much of that early time in Los Angeles, California. So like my life was severely affected by it. And maybe it wasn't quite as extreme there in Texas, but I'm just curious, like, did it surprise you at all, just sort of seeing how much mass acceptance, maybe not as much where you are, but of just lockdown? No, not at all.
I guess I'm to the point. I'm 56 years old now, and nothing surprises me anymore. No, nothing surprised me. I went with the flow. I watched it. I observed it with bemused detachment. I was one of these annoying assholes who I enjoyed the lockdown because it didn't affect me very much. And we had like a year with my son in his last year at home before he goes to college, and my wife got to work from home, and we handled it well because we live in a nice, rich Republican neighborhood and whatever. And somehow out of all this craziness, starting what is it now? October. So about 10 months ago, early 2021, say February, I started traveling. So this year, strangely, like over the years, oh God, we're on a tangent now.
This whole show is tangents. It's all good.
Okay, we should call it tangents.
Tangents of liberty.
I'll do these. I just sent my friends this. Every now and then when I do these, like when I subscribe to some service, I'll put a fake name in. Like I'll add a doctor to my title, or Kinsella the Third, or I'll put Hillary as a F head in my in the middle. And so I just got like this thing from Johns Hopkins, like to renew my Ayn Rand journal subscription. And it was like Stephan Kinsella, Dr. Stephan Kinsella, which I'm not, the Third, Lord of Liberty. And I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when I did that. You do these things for fun. I don't remember how I got on this tangent, but the point is, every now and then I get on these things, these kicks, like over the years where I like say, God damn it, I'm traveling too much for libertarian bullshit, which I enjoy, but it's like, it's a pain in the ass, you know? So I like, this year I'm going to do nothing. And I always fail on my promises. So you would think that the COVID year, at least 2021, would be a year I could fulfill that. But strangely, oddly, 2021, I think I've traveled more than I've ever traveled in my life. I've done maybe a dozen or 18 trips, 2 or 3 international. It's a pain in the ass with COVID, but I've done all these libertarian trips and some other non-libertarian trips, like going to Alaska on a bike ride with some friends, libertarian friends, you know. And it's been like the best year of my life, actually, in a way. So the last year has been crazy for me. But observe, like Las Vegas and Alabama for Auburn, for Mises, and California, and just everywhere. Turkey for Hoppe's thing. So the last year, in a way, for me has been crazy. Honestly, next year, 2022, I'm going to try to stick back to my original curmudgeon thing, and like just do 5 things instead of 20. But in 2 weeks, I'm going to New York for Gene Epstein's. Oh, this is good. I need to mention this. Anyone here who's listening, because you're going to post this before my event. So the event is November, I think, 15th. It's Monday, whatever Monday is.
Yeah, this will be up like a week before that.
Okay, so Monday is Soho Forum. Gene Epstein is having the Soho Forum, and I'm going there to debate Richard Epstein, the legal theorist, on intellectual property.
Excellent.
And of course, Gene has gotten a lot of flack from these COVID-tarred libertarians who are saying, "Oh, you shouldn't be having the debate in New York because the forum requires a vaccine," and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, it's horrible. But to my mind, he's doing something good. He's persevering despite all this horrible government fascism. I mean, maybe he should move it out of the city and do a traveling roadshow after this. I don't know. But anyway, he's not to be condemned. He's to be commended because, you know, he's trying to get something done despite all this bullshit.
I like the idea of a Soho Forum traveling roadshow. I can get behind that.
I do too, and I think maybe people should write Gene and tell him that they would come. So, like,
or invite him to your venues and just make it easy. You know, say here's a space.
Exactly.
Here we can put these dates open, and here's what we can do, and boom.
Exactly. I don't think this is a big money making thing. He's doing as a passion for liberty, and so if he can get some support from other cities, and get committed, you know, people that will come and all this, because he's doing it where people that are not vaccinated can come. He should be rewarded for that. So I don't know. It's just my idea. He didn't put me up to this. I'll see him tomorrow. He's coming to Houston for an event. So I'll see him tomorrow and see if he agrees with my, tomorrow will be in the past by the time people hear this. Anyway, I'm rambling big time. So I'm totally,
that's all good. I enjoy
totally
rambling.
Tangential. So
that's so you did mention Hoppe there in your travels. I think you did see him at a recent event. And I think you've known
actually, can you see
Hans-Herman
my
Hoppe
t-shirt? Can you see my t-shirt? This is my t-shirt. I got this in Bodrum, Turkey. Evolution in Bodrum.
Nice.
Yeah, I got this in Turkey in September at that conference. Every year, Hans-Herman Hoppe has a conference in Turkey, in Bodrum, Turkey, where his family, his wife has a hotel, which is where the situs of the conference is. It's called the Property and Freedom Society, propertyandfreedom.org. I run the website, so we put all the speeches up there. We're about to open up a podcast starting from 2006 when we opened this thing up to put all the material up online. So yeah, that was then, and that was a great conference. It was about half the size of 2 years ago, like 50 people instead of 100, because of COVID. But we held it last year. It was canceled because of COVID. So,
did you have to show essentially a vaccine passport or anything to enter the country, or to not have to quarantine or anything like that?
Yes. So it was. So like I said, this year I've traveled about 18 times, and they were all domestic, except I went to. They're all domestic except I went to Turkey. I was counting Alaska as international. Alaska's not international. So it was slightly stressful because of the COVID thing. So I went with some friends, and it's like a hodgepodge of informal / formal ever shifting regulations. So that's why it's stressful, because you leave the country
Right.
and you're not sure if you can get back or
There could be a different rule 3 days after you came in that changes what
Now,
you can do.
I was vaccinated in March of this year, and then I had COVID in July because I went to New Hampshire. I went to Porkfest in New Hampshire, and my friend Anthony Samaroff, the Scottish Libertarian, everyone knows this poor guy has gotten all kinds of grief because he was the alleged super spreader of COVID, which I think he was. But I mean, so what? I mean, the disease passes from person to person. So I was one of his friends who caught it from him. I remember the dinner I was at with him when he had a hot forehead, and I was like, "Oh, are you hot?" That's probably when I got it. But
no,
no
mate,
one
I'm feeling just fine.
So
my
I
bad
got it, but
fucking
I'm kind of grateful I got it because it was very mild. And then I thought I'm kind of unlikely to get it again when I go to Turkey. But so to go to Turkey, a vaccine passport, proof of vaccination sufficed. So they just cursorily looked at it at Turkish Air in Houston, and I just went through.
Was it just a card for you, or would you just actually have an app or anything like that?
It was a card, but I lost the card on the plane on the way there.
shit.
So I lost it. So I don't have my card. But in the meantime, I've gotten a replacement digital printout from CVS. I don't know. But I also had with me proof of recovery of COVID within 90 days from my doctor, because the U.S. apparently would take that to return. But the point is, it's just stressful going overseas. Like, I don't think I will travel overseas again until the COVID stuff dies down. And I know most libertarians think it will never die down. It's going to become the new Orwellian state, but I think it will die down because people are getting sick of it. And they're getting, even Democrats are like, come on.
You know what makes me say, come on? It's when I find out someone I know or love has not been taking care of their finances, has not been thinking of the future. Well, a great way to do that is by investing with our friends at iTrust Capital. With iTrust Capital, you can invest in cryptocurrencies through a traditional IRA structure, which allows you to get some tax-free earnings from those cryptocurrency gains. And you can do this with the best company possible out there to do that, our friends at iTrust Capital. And whether you hold your assets for the long term or you buy and sell with the market, iTrust Capital's IRA accounts provide the lowest transaction fees for buying Bitcoin or other digital currencies. I want to encourage you to get your free report. That is step one here, guys. If you want more information, do yourself a favor, get your free report right now by heading over to itrustcapital.com and use promo code LIONS to get your first month for free. You just can't beat that.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to ask you when you mentioned that earlier. When you say die down, do you mean the disease will kind of flame out? Because I think that's kind of happening anyway in several ways. But or do you really mean like all these restrictions, all these mandates, all these? You think that's all?
I mean the political response to it, but I could be wrong. But I think, yeah, they saw their opportunity, they seized on it, they went apeshit. It was a weird mania that seized the nation and controlled by the crazy democratic state. It was horrible. No, they're going to go back to climate change. They're going to ruin the world another way with climate change bullshit.
We'll just have lockdowns for that then, yeah. Now that we're used to them, right?
Yeah, no, they might. No, so I think that the COVID stuff is going to, look, in my own mind, now I'm in Houston in Texas. Houston's not a conservative city. Everyone thinks it is. It's a bunch of limousine liberals and rich Democrats. It's not that, and welfare Democrats. It's not. This is not a conservative city, nor is Austin or San Antonio or Dallas. Texas itself may be, but that's because of the guys in trucks out in the farms. But living here is okay for me. But anyway, I forgot where I was going with this, but
I'm just curious. Even these mandates coming down from Biden, like, do you think this is a temporary thing that's going to completely flame away? Because I see so many companies just going towards this, even pre-mandates, that it's hard. Or do you think the mandates are going to go away, but maybe we'll still have a lot of corporations that kind of keep?
Well, I don't know what's going to happen with all these employees that are starting to put up a fight, like the airline pilots and the military guys or whatever. I don't know who's going to win this battle. I would like to side with the employees and the common working man, or whatever the left libertarians like to call it. But I'm afraid that the inexorable power of the state will win. But by the time it's going to win, they will lose steam because people. So what I was going to say is like I think I noticed about 3 weeks or a month ago, I noticed that something had changed in my own personal habits. Like I just don't carry a mask like I used to carry a mask with me all the time. Like just as like if you go into a store and they need a mask, you have your mask with you, right? And that's been for about a year or more. And I noticed about 2-3 weeks ago, I don't have a mask with me all the time. It happened to me this morning. I went somewhere and I had to borrow a mask from someone to go somewhere. So, and that is Texas. So maybe we're not the same as the rest of the country. But the point is, I think that the ice is thawing. This can't sustain forever. And I do think also the disease will get gradually milder, and that will give less. There's less reason that the status can use to keep the lockdowns going. This is my guess. I have no idea. I'm hopeful. Maybe I'm putting my hopes above my realistic predictions.
I mean, I want you to be right. That I sure do. But so one reason I initially brought you on is because I know you are good friends with Hans-Herman Hoppe. I know you go back with him like many years, and not only do you know him personally, but you're also probably one of the foremost experts on his work outside of maybe himself. And there's been a lot of talk about.
I'm even better than Hans on Hans at this point.
Yeah,
he's old.
Maybe you are the number one expert then. Yeah,
he's like a Joe Biden. He's senile. I'm joking.
So, okay,
Hans is sharp as ever.
So, but there has been a lot of talk about his work lately, in particular, maybe among some of the quote unquote post-libertarians. Maybe we can talk about that later. But I want to kind of dig into his work a little bit more with you, because whenever Hoppe comes up, there's a certain segment of libertarians that come out and start screeching and just start to throw stuff out there like racist or stuff, anti-gay, he's a monarchist, all this stuff. And you never see, not never, but from those people anyway, you don't really see like in-depth analysis of his work. You just see these kind of smears coming out. So I want to kind of try to demystify Hoppe a little bit. But maybe you can just start giving us a little background on how you came to know him personally, and when you first became introduced to his work.
I was a young libertarian law student at LSU in 1988, my first year. And I was steeped in objectivism and libertarian theory for several years, and 6 years at that point, or 7 years. And I was like a budding Austrian and Rothbardian anarchist at this point. Like I had graduated from objectivism up to anarchism, right? And Hoppe's argumentation ethics article or symposium in Liberty magazine came out, and I used to be an avid reader of Liberty and Reason magazine because we didn't have the internet then. I know. That's all there was. there was the Free Market newsletter from Mises. There was Reason magazine, the Freeman, which was from Fee, and there was Liberty magazine. That's all there was.
No internet to argue with libertarians on. That must have been.
No, we had to. Our arguments took a lot longer by snail mail. It took a lot longer to hate people then.
Sure. Yeah. Now you can 10 seconds. Like, I hate this guy. Cool.
I mean, I was corresponding with like Tibor McCann and David Kelly. David Kelly was a professor at Vassar up in Poughkeepsie, New York, and Tibor was somewhere where I'm corresponding with these random people that wrote a book I read. And I remember David Kelly wrote me back, and he answered a couple of my questions, but he said, it's like 1987 or 88. He goes, Stephan, you're in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. There's a guy I know that's another fan of liberal ideas, libertarian ideas, objectivism, whatever, in Jackson, Mississippi, Jack Chris, who became one of my best friends. You might want to contact him. But that's 3-4 hours away from me. That's how it was back then. Like I had a guy in New York telling me to contact a guy 3 hours away from me to make a contact. So anyway, I forgot where we were going with this, but
Hoppe.
Oh, so I read the Hoppe thing and I got fascinated by his argumentation. I think that was a great segue, or not segue. That was a great way to guide me back on the path just now. You just said Hoppe. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember. So I started thinking about the Hoppe argumentation ethics and my own budding theory of rights, which I was working on at the time in my head. And eventually, after I graduated from law school a couple years later and went to London to get a master's, started writing on some of this, and I ended up writing a review of his book, and I sent it to him in 1993 or 1994, and he sent me a note back. So basically, I got interested in it and was fascinated by it, and I started wanting to explore my, I was doing lawyer stuff, patent law at a big law firm in Houston at the time, and then Philadelphia. But I was also wanting to write on things I knew something about, like rights theory and also later intellectual property and all that. But the rights theory was based on his stuff. So I went to, he said, Stephan, it's a great review you did of my book and, whatever. And we're having this conference. And the conference was the John Randolph Society conference in November of 1994 in Crystal City, Virginia, which is right outside of DC. And that was in the middle of this second fusionism phase, which I call it, which was when the Rothbardians and the Mises people tried to ally with the Chronicles magazine crowd, Tom Fleming, Sam Francis, these guys. It was like a second fusionism. The first fusionism was Frank Meyer and Rothbard and all these guys, and William Buckley and National Review. That was like the first fusionism. I actually want to write an article on this. I haven't gotten around to it yet. I think the first fusionism was around Frank Meyer and National Review and Rothbard, and then the second fusionism attempt was this paleo conservative / paleo libertarian alliance, which was attempted in the 90s between the Mises Institute people centered around Rothbard and the Chronicles magazine crowd, like Tom Fleming and these guys. Anyway, I just went to this thing to meet Hoppe. As a bonus, I got to meet Rothbard and Rockwell and David Gordon and
that's
Tom DiLorenzo
right there,
and all my friends and that became friends later. But I went there and I got Rothbard to sign my book, and then he died 2 months later. So the funny thing was, I had started becoming. I mean, Hoppe and I. We just bonded very quickly because we had a similar appreciation for all these things. And I was clearly an admirer and a up and coming lawyer and all this kind of, possible legal scholar. So when Rothbard died 2 months later in January of 1995, Hoppe says, well, he's been now appointed to be the editor of the JLS, the Journal of Libertarian Studies, because Rothbard died, and also the co-editor of the Quarterly Journal. I think the co-editorship was shared with Salerno, Hoppe, and maybe Herbener. I can't remember. Anyway, so Hans says, Stephan, would you like to be the book review editor for the JLS? Because he trusted me and he knew he needed help. So I said, fine. So I started collaborating with him on that. But really what did it for me was, like 1996, or maybe it was 95 when he died, the Mises Institute started having these annual conferences in March or in the spring called the Austrian Scholars Conference. That's since been disbanded, by the way, and it's now replaced with. It sort of got replaced by two things. One was the Austrian Economics Research Conference, which is more economics based, which is the spring thing now. But they sometimes have a Libertarian Scholars Conference in New York, which is a revival of something that happened in the old days, my understanding. Anyway, the point is, for about 10, 15 years, there was an Austrian Scholars Conference, which was an interdisciplinary conference in Auburn at the Mises Institute. And I would go to every one of those, and for every one of those, I would prepare a talk. And most of those turned into all the papers that are now part of my corpus of my body of work. And over those years, I became closer with Hans. And then after about 10 years, 1995 to about 2005, he was getting closer to retirement and moving back to his homeland in Austria and Germany. And he married a Turkish woman who has a thing in Turkey. So he decided to start the Property and Freedom Society in 2006, along with people like Yuri Maltsev and me and Guido Holzman and Tom DiLorenzo. And so the first meeting was 2006. It's been going on ever since. That's a compressed version of my history with all this, and I've become closer and closer friends. And I've never been more of an admirer of Hans, but nevertheless, I'm just a constant admirer of Hans's genius and body of work, which is so broad. I mean, because I see so many people that admire Hans for reasons that were not the ones that attracted me to him, which is his first 2 books on theory. People are interested in him now because of his democracy, because of his social critiques, his What Must Be Done article, which is been getting a lot of play lately. So I find it fascinating how widespread the appeal of Hoppe's ideas are to different segments of our libertarian community.
One thing that comes up a lot, and I think this comes mostly from Democracy, the God That Failed, although he never actually says this at all, but people say, well, Hoppe is a monarchist. Now, he talks about monarchy a lot in that book, and he compares democracy to monarchy and suggests that monarchy would be preferable, but he actually is pretty thorough in saying that he's not a monarchist. But maybe you can just expand on that idea, on what he goes into more specifically in terms of monarchies and why he sees monarchies as possibly, or not possibly, like definitely being preferable to democracies.
Yeah, every now and then someone says, "What do you disagree with Hans on?" And I can find a couple quibbles, a couple footnotes in a paper with Guido Holzman or something, about how you allocate your money or something like that. But one thing I might not completely agree with Hans on. Well, so Hans is mischaracterized as being a monarchist, and he states explicitly he's not a monarchist. He's not a monarchist because he's an anarchist, Rothbardian libertarian. So his ultimate goal is libertarianism. What he says is that there's a common misconception among the West, and even among liberals, and even among libertarians, and even among the radical ones like Mises and Rothbard, who have a sort of soft spot for the American founding fathers and the revolution and democracy as some kind of progress from the 1917 pre-World War I realm, right, of monarchies. And what Hans points out is that not so fast. The move from monarchy to democracy was not an unalloyed good. It wasn't unambiguously progress. And I agree completely with Hans on this. Where I think I might slightly disagree is what Hans might say is that he might say that monarchy is superior to democracy, like in every way. So like if you had to choose A versus B, you would choose this. And I might agree that like a Liechtenstein model would be superior to Western large mass democratic states. But what I would say is that, and I think what Hans would agree if he was pushed, is that given that anarchy and the private law society, which is his term for anarchy and libertarianism, given that that's our ideal, you could argue that monarchy is superior to democracy in many respects, if not most respects, but not in every respect. I mean, they're both imperfect, so you can't expect them to both. So it's not there's a smooth continuum from ancient regimes to monarchy to democracy, like it's always worse. I mean, there are some things about democracy that are probably better than under monarchy. But if you ask me as a practical matter, what would I choose to live under? A Liechtenstein, like a world of 10,000 Liechtensteins, or a world of 17 Americas? I think probably 10,000 Liechtensteins would be way better, but not better in every way. But the thing is, if it's not better in every way, there's 10,000, so you could just move from
right. That's kind of the idea.
You could just move from one to the other. So that would be what would make them better too. The threat of exit and competition and all this.
Maybe you don't have as much voice in a monarchy, but if we have exit and you can go to whichever one you want, that kind of will naturally make things at least better than if you didn't have that.
And not only that, the nature of monarchy is that the monarch is visible, and there's a distinction between the monarch and the leader and the people. So the people know who to go after if there's something goes bad. So the monarch can only tax the people so much and has to demonstrate some kind of benefits. And, if he's horrible, he can be killed. I mean, Hans tells his story about, at least in a monarchy, on occasion, you can have a good monarch, but you can never have a good democratic state. It's the nature of it, it's going to select the worst people. But on occasion, like, an emperor or a monarch might have a genius, benevolent son, on occasion. Mm-hmm. He even tells a story like one of his friends was being robbed at an ATM in some European town, and at 2 a.m., after everybody's drunk, after going to the bars, and some robber robs him of his 400 euros he's getting from the ATM. And the guy's like, dude, you're taking my money. I can't even get home. And so the robber gave him 20 bucks back, or 20 euros back, so he can get a cab. So, like, he had a nice robber. So right. On occasion, you might get a nice robber. Like, the nice private criminals are horrible, yes, but on occasion they might have some ounce of decency to them.
Right.
But
they might give you a bus ticket home or something like that.
Yeah, they might give you a bus ticket home, but you don't get that with the administrative state. They have no soul, no personality, no compassion.
At the end, in democracy, like in this, especially in our giant democracy with just layers and layers and layers of it, there's really no one accountable, is the thing. Like, even the politician is there for a brief time and he's gone, and he's never held accountable for anything.
And that's part of Hoppe's argument. There's a time preference argument. Like, the leaders of a democracy, they're in there for a temporary time, so they have no incentive to push for policies that would maximize the wealth of the nation in the long term. They want to maximize the wealth that they can get, or they can steer towards their cronies and their friends in the short term. So you have short term thinking, which is another trope that I know all the neo-Hoppians have jumped onto, which is this low time preference, high time preference mentality or model.
Who would you call a neo-Hoppian? Is that like someone like the new, like, who would you be describing there?
By neo-Hoppians, I mean the people I see that I'm not sure if I totally agree with their politics, who admire aspects of Hoppe's thought on the What Must Be Done essay, and on democracy versus monarchy, and on the time preference type issues. I think a lot of those guys are Hoppians too. Like, they've read maybe his earlier stuff, but I think a lot of them have not. Like, a lot of them have read the democracy stuff and the monarchy stuff and the cultural stuff.
That's pretty much what I've read too. Yeah, I mean,
correct. So a lot of people have not read his hardcore praxeology, his rights theory, the stuff that's in his two big books, A Theory of Socialism and Capitalism, 1989, I believe, and the follow-up book, The Economics and Ethics of Private Property. Getting that right? 1993. So those are his two big foundational works. He has others too, but those are the two big foundational works where he extends Mises on praxeology, Rothbard on politics, and that's what blew my mind. But I'm an old timer. I didn't. I'm like one of these guys, like, everyone loves Ron Paul. And I'm like, okay, I have no problem with Ron Paul. I'm going to his thing in December, whatever it is, here, 3rd, 4th, here outside of Houston in Lake Jackson. But I didn't come into Liberty through Ron Paul. So, and I've never learned anything from Ron Paul, really, to be honest. Sure. So he's great as a politician, but, he's not my mojo, because I'm just a different generation. And the same thing, I think, with these. So there's later generations of libertarians who've learned things about Hoppe. I mean, you have the meme generation, like people with the helicopters and the Pinochet stuff, and the, and sometimes it goes too far. You have even the snake stuff, which, look, I was just in Turkey. I'm 50, 55, 56.
What's the 55. Snake? What's the snake one? I know the helicopter thing.
So the snake one, like I said, I didn't know this. And so I think I was in Aphrodisias, which is this old ancient city, on a side tour with my brother-in-law, Tommy Turner, who came with me, but also along with me was Juan Carpio, who's a good libertarian Austrian buddy of mine from Ecuador, and Greg Dabrowski, this young Polish guy, and his dad, Dobrin, who's who's an archaeologist. And anyway, so we had a good group of guys there. We were having fun, but it was the 35-year-old Greg And Greg Morin was there too, my friend Greg Morin. But Greg Dabrowski was there, and he's 35, and Juan's 45. And we three were walking, like there's just rocks everywhere and fossils, or not fossils, but like ruins. And one of them said something about Sneck. And like, of course, I'm the old guy.
Oh, I have seen this meme.
Yeah. And I was like, what's that about? And they're like, he said, don't step on Sneck. And I'm like, what? Like, I had no idea what they're talking about, right? They're trying to do meme talk, and it's above the old guy's head. So they finally explained that Sneck means snake. Don't step on Sneck. It's sort of like the Gadsden flag. I guess don't tread on me. I don't know, something like that. Yeah. But there's another snake meme that somehow morphed into this, like this Pepe the Frog kind of bullshit. So you have this weird alt-right stuff too, in this kind of post-libertarian. And I don't mean to say all the post-libertarians are like this, but some people that were libertarians that became like Chris Cantwell, these types, these kind of these racialist types who like.
I would certainly separate like Chris Cantwell from like, you know, the more current post-libertarian types.
Yeah, sure. I'm just saying people that like literally they're post-libertarian in the sense that they were libertarian and now they've moved on to something else. I don't know how to characterize them, but
do you think that is where like the part where people will act like Hoppe's theories or what have you are racist, because some people like a Chris Cantwell will actually maybe take those theories and then spin them in this way where maybe they actually are racist. So then they might take it and say, well, I'd like to build a racist community or something like that. I mean, how does that
my personal view is there may be a few minds that do that, but they're just really stupid people. Like if you have to be really stupid to really just be deceived by this and to like, oh, Hoppe is racist because there's a meme out there that's, you know, whatever. I think that's a trivial fraction of it. I think the rest of it is active dishonesty on the part of either the same old respectable Cato minarchist, you know, establishment.
I think it was actually the most recently a Cato guy that I saw literally just saying that Hoppe is racist.
Yeah, of course.
I don't want to name names since I don't know for sure, but it was definitely someone from Cato.
Yeah. By the way, I will always name names now. I don't. Just
because in case I'm wrong,
I get it. I understand being cautious, but I've come to think that. So like, there's something to the Jason Stapleton guy. These guys that say that, you know, the way to freedom is wealth. Like, I don't agree with everything all these guys say, because they all have this pro-activist. They all like when you see the debates between Angela McArdle and this other guy, and it was on your show. I just was watching.
Yeah, Matt. I was with Matt Erickson. Yeah.
Yeah, Erickson and Dave Smith and who's the other guy?
He did one with Jason as well.
Jason. That you might have seen, every one of them has nuggets of things that I agree with. By and large, I side with Dave Smith and Angela, by and large. But all of them have this presupposition of activism. Like what's the best way to achieve liberty? Like, that's what they all think, ultimately. But it's like, well, why do we, like, maybe we need to do a meta thing and go back a level and see whether that's really, like, that's not why I'm a libertarian. It never was. I mean, I agree with Jason that if you have more wealth and power, that it enhances your own freedom. And that's probably what you should do if you want to have a direct consequence. But then he says, but I want to help other people do it. I was like, well, what does that even, like, I could see building your own wealth, but what do you mean you want to help other people do it? Like, is it a business? Is it, so like something shady about it, or I don't get it.
What do you mean by shady? I have to push back a little bit there, because I do know these people very well. So, like, do you mean shady? Like, you think there's a scam element of it?
Maybe. I don't know. I don't know what he means by. If you just said my goal in life is to increase my own wealth and power, and that's all I care about, the rest of the humanity can go to hell in a handbasket. Although he said, I care about other people. That's fine. But if you say, okay, but the way to help them is to help them gain wealth and power, it's like, okay, but like if he's criticizing Dave Smith for saying, if he's saying that mere words don't help other people get their liberty, right, which is true, Like mere messaging doesn't help people get their liberty. Merely running a candidate for president in the election, on the LP ticket doesn't help people get liberty. If he's criticizing them for saying it doesn't result in other people getting liberty, and the only way to actually get liberty is to get wealth, okay, that might be right. But all that means is that's what you do. But then if you say, so I want to get liberty, I want to get wealth in my own life, but I also want to help other people, then I'm wondering, okay, what does that mean? Like, how are you helping them? Like, do they have to buy into your, like, I keep hearing this thing about independent revenue source, which I think is complete. I think it's bullshit. I mean, there are many ways. So like, just like there are many ways to achieve liberty, there are many ways to get wealth. One might be a W-2 job in a city like we do, like my wife and I do, and okay, yeah, I could have mobility as my fucking goal and move around the world and go to fucking Saipan or something and live like a pauper and, disrupt everything and, be a lifestyle libertarian. That's not the way everyone's got to do it. You have to have this broad ecumenical view. There's lots of ways to do things. So when you say, I want to help people do it, I start wondering, okay, when's the infinite banking concept bullshit going to come out? When's the product? I don't know. Is he trying to sell people? Let me invest your money for you. Here's my product. I want you to join. Here's my mailing list. He has
the main thing he's pushing now is like he has a network. It's basically like not to do a commercial.
Here we go. When I hear the word network, I get suspicious right away. Network market. Is it network marketing?
Is it that much different to be out there giving people a message of like, here's this other thing you should do to have more liberty in your life, whether that's gaining more wealth or what have you? Is that much different of a conceptually speaking? Then
I think it's different. If someone said, "Hey, Stephan, you're a friend of mine. I know you. In your opinion, what's your advice? What should I do in my life?" I mean, I'm not scamming them. They ask me a question, I give them an answer. I say, okay, get a degree in this, major in this field. Don't divorce your wife, or don't marry a woman you don't love, or don't have a kid if you're not ready. I don't know. It's just advice,
Because one thing that I've seen in the last like maybe year and a half is I would agree with you that there's like not everybody wants to do things the same way. So for some people, like, having mobile income and maybe multiple sources of income and being able to be a digital nomad, that's like a higher value than perhaps
that's fine.
Right.
But don't pretend that it comes with no cost. Sure, I mean, moving to Saipan. I mean, I was hearing one of these libertards on the thing the other day. He was in Saipan, but now he's in Austin. I'm like, okay, so you moved all the way to Saipan to avoid income taxes. Probably didn't have enough income that these 90% discount made a difference. I don't know, but now he's in Texas. Okay, that's fine. But Texas is part of the U.S. and you got to pay your taxes again. So it's like just going back and forth. All these libertarians are always desperately seeking for something, and they're not always clear about what it is. What I was telling Pete and I think it'd be helpful if people would just be explicit and clear about the presuppositions of what they're talking about. Like, if you have an activist presupposition, just state it and see if everyone agrees. Don't just take it for granted, because that's question begging. So if you assume that, well, the best way to achieve liberty is this, like, well, wait a minute. What do you mean? Is my goal to achieve liberty? I mean, my goal as a libertarian is to live a moral life and to understand things and to advance scholarship. I'm sorry if that's not good enough for the libertards who think that the activist types who think that, I'm not marching at a pro-gun rally in downtown Houston on a Saturday afternoon when I could, be sitting in my hot tub and enjoying myself. I mean, okay.
I'd rather be in the hot tub too. Yeah.
But the point is, it's like they think that the presupposition is that, like, even this Angela McArdle debate with Erickson, they both had these unstated presuppositions, but they shared some too, which they didn't want to identify that they shared. Anyway, it's too much to go into, but
yeah, I was planning to circle back to more of that, but I was letting you go.
No, you can. I don't mind. Wherever you're going to take it, I'm okay.
I mean, I was kind of curious, but we can. Well, Which way? We can veer a couple different ways here, though. Why don't we go back to a little bit more of this Hoppe stuff, and then I'll circle back to this post-libertarian thing. How about that?
Sure.
Because I do want to kind of get your thoughts on where does the re come? Where does like this whenever Hoppe comes up, like whether it's someone from Cato, they'll say, "Oh, the racist Hoppe."
Oh yeah.
Austrian economics.
Off track. Yeah,
it was. You know what? You say names. It was an Alex Narase tweet. There you go. I know it was that.
Yeah. So my view is, it's like the people that hate him and make these, they think that he's racist, or the I don't know, paleos or anarchists or libertarians or Mises people. I think the people that actually believe that are very, very small in number, because it's just not true, and you have to be a retard to believe that. I mean, so the people that really say that, I think they're like I said, the respectable types. And my view is that there's this, first of all, there's always a personality thing. I always find it helpful, and I always enjoy, like when I see movies or I meet friends from another country, and I get the perspective on the U.S. that's not from the inside, because we get really myopic and self-centered because we're the biggest in the world and we're the most important. And that's another thing I hate about the libertarian movement, is so American fucking centric. And this leads us to founder worship and the fucking Constitution worship and the goddamn Cato people, all these idiots putting the Liberty Bell and the Statue of Liberty and all these symbols of the American Revolution as if they're and the Constitution, even worse, the Constitution, as representative of liberty. It's like, God damn it, get off this American bullshit.
Sure, they represent the American myth of liberty, but they don't really represent any kind of libertarian or Austro.
The American myth of liberty, I appreciate. I understand why we became the home to it. There's a connection with the Lockeans and the levelers and the pre-British. I understand that, but they're conflating. They're buying into the fucking propaganda. I mean, the Constitution was a coup by the elite property classes, the white males, who wanted to divert the tax revenues from Britain to themselves, right? They succeeded. Congratulations. To do it, they had to use all these patriotic images. I just heard this funny black comedian guy. He was talking about the national anthem, and he's like, it's not catchy, and it's the same song as the Brits use. It should be changed the words. If you want people to be more patriotic, change the goddamn song. Of course, the Trumpers will go crazy if you say that.
Give us Born in the USA or something. Come on.
So anyway, what I think is I think there's a bit of personal stuff from the old days of the movement, which permeates everything to this day. And like I said, people on the outside get mystified by this, like people in Brazil and other countries are like, why is Group A and Group B hate each other in America? Because we look to America as like the beacon of liberty or whatever, in terms of I don't mean the country itself, but I mean the libertarian groups that are here. Like, they don't understand it. And I kind of think, if you don't understand it, maybe you're right that like these differences are petty and trivial. And I do think they'll die out over time. But I think because the libertarian movement is so young, like, I think it only started in the 60s with Ayn Rand, basically, and Milton Friedman, and then Rothbard and Mises and Leonard Reed and the Foundation. So that was the genesis of it. So you had all these personality squabbles, and the big personality squabbles was really between the hardcore radical and then Austrian types, anarchist types like Rothbard and then Mises Institute, versus the more incremental, cozy up to power, have
Beltways, we can call them.
The Cato, the Beltway types, the Cato types, whatever. And plus the actual rift that happened with Rothbard himself and the Cato people. Like, he started the Cato Institute and the Libertarian Party, I think. He started the Cato Institute, and then he was kicked out by the billionaire, and so that led to bad blood. And then, so I think you had the flowering of the movement, you had the growth of the think tanks and these people getting more and more position in some academic institutions, and everyone's staking out their position. And when Hoppe came along as Rothbard's sort of understudy in the 80s, he was number one German, and of course all Germans are Nazis, we know, right? And number two,
and many news now, apparently.
Yeah. And number two, he was Rothbard's chosen child. And, he was also anarchist and Austrian, Misesian Austrian, not just Hayekian flappy bullshit. He was actually hardcore everything. And he came out with some pioneering new theories, like he extended praxeology, he extended economic applications to things, like antitrust theory and other things. And he came up with a new ethical theory, which Rothbard wholeheartedly endorsed and adopted, his argumentation ethics. And I think that pissed off and threatened a lot of the establishment people for the same reasons that they were pissed off that Rothbard and Lew Rockwell started the Mises Institute, and that they didn't bow to the will of the Cato, Coctopus bullshit, whatever. I don't know. I'm just saying it's a messy thing. So I think there was some professional jealousy there. Like he was Rothbard's anointed thing. And these are cocky ass. A lot of these guys are cocky. And in the old days, they were mid-level people too. I mean, you didn't have to be a world-class genius to become a leading libertarian intellectual, because you came from nothing. There was low-hanging fruit. You know what I mean? You got a lot of these middling level intellectual people that had risen to some position of prominence, and they were desperate to cling on to their little perch. And they had their own stupid little classical liberal Aristotelian, weak ass defense of liberty. And when Hoppe came out with a fresh new one that Rothbard endorsed, they were threatened by it. So they had to take him down. So I think that's part of it. That's part of it.
So it's more maybe in-group identity that keeps this thing going more than
that's what I think. That's
policies
I've
ever been
I've
able to
seen.
find. Yeah.
All right, guys, before we wrap up here, I got to let you know about one of our great sponsors, our longtime sponsors at Lorenzetti, Italy. If you are a fan of coffee, if you like a nice fresh cup of joe to wake up in the morning as I do, you're going to want to check out our friends at Lorenzetti, Italy. They deliver fine, premium Italian coffees right to your door in these nice little tins that look so wonderful sitting on your counter there. And if that weren't all enough, these guys are great libertarians. They are Patreon supporters of this show. They are absolutely worthy of your support. If that all wasn't enough, these guys do more than just sell coffee. They also help other entrepreneurs set up their own coffee businesses, help them acquire equipment, acquire financing, everything they need to start their own coffee business, start their own coffee shops. So you definitely want to check them out for that reason if that's something that's been on your mind. Either way, just fantastic people at Lorenzetti, Italy. Amazing people, fantastic people. You'll want to support them if you're fans of the show. Heck, even if you're not, if you're listening to this by accident, check them out anyway. They have great coffee. Lorenzetti, Italy. You can find them at lorenzetti.coffee. That's LORENZOTTI.coffee. And you do not want to forget your Lions of Liberty listener discount. Just use discount code ROAR for 10% off your order.
I'll tell a story. I mean, I remember I was a young, fresh lawyer. I was open to everything, I'm in Philadelphia. I'm starting to write articles and like have some credentials and, be maybe possibly part of some of this movement. I didn't have any alliances. And this is like the early 90s. So I remember I actually got a job offer from Cato in 1998 or 1999 from Roger Pilon, who's a brilliant philosopher lawyer there, although he supported the Iraq War and all that kind of crap. So yeah, being an anarchist doesn't really help sometimes, does it? But I remember I called him because Hoppe had written his argumentation ethics ideas based in part upon the discourse ethics ideas of his PhD professor, Jürgen Habermas, who's like a world famous philosopher in Europe. He's a lefty and he's all over the map, but he had this interesting idea about how you justify norms through discourse ethics. And Hoppe took that, pared it down, combined it with Austrian economics insights and radical Rothbardian political insights, and came up with a fresh defense of libertarianism. Okay, fine. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't, but it's not a horrible thing to try to do, right? Anyway, there was a similar phenomenon, which I thought was interesting, and that was there's an American philosopher named Alan Gaworth who had his own justification of the liberal welfare state, like Habermas did. He's not exactly Habermasian, but it's called the principle of generic consistency. They're both like neo-Kantians. Okay, so they're both like they have these weird discourse ethics type arguments for the liberal welfare state. So Hoppe took Habermas's and turned it into a libertarian version, and Roger Pilon, who got his PhD under Gaworth in America, took Gaworth's social democratic neo-Kantian sort of discourse ethics stuff and turned it into a libertarian version. So you have these two smart PhD libertarian philosophers, each of whom took their PhD professors, their dissertation advisor professors, kind of neo-Kantian democratic theory normative arguments, and they worked it into a libertarian thing. So there's some similarities and some parallels and some affinities, and I was fascinated by both. Although Hoppe criticizes Gewerth in his thing, and I think he's right. He criticizes Gewerth because Gewerth is based upon action, whereas Habermas and Hoppe are based upon argumentation. And they argue, and I agree with them, that argumentation has normative connotations, but action does not. Okay, because Crusoe himself, alone in an island, can act, but there's no normative connotations because there's no other people. There's no anyway. It's a philosophical thing. It's about how the universalizability of principle applies. But anyway, I called Polan because I'm like a young lawyer and I'm like interested in Cato at the time and all this and libertarianism. And I remember I was talking to Polan. I think this was before I got the job offer to edit their Supreme Court review, which exists now, which I turned down immediately because the pay was less than being a lawyer in Philadelphia. And like, hey, I'm a Jason Stapleton kind of guy. I'm like, I'm going to make money and I can buy my own liberty and be my own benefactor. I don't need to be at the behest of Charles fucking Koch. You know what I mean? Which thank God I didn't. Although I've turned down Koch. I've actually accepted some Koch money in the meantime, but you know, I don't think it tainted me that much. Right. Anyway.
Doesn't sound like it.
So Polan's like, I said, what do you think about like, I'm being a naive young lawyer, like these foreigners do, like they don't understand these disputes. And I said, hey, Roger, your stuff with Gewerth is great. It's interesting. It's fascinating. But have you heard of Hans-Herman Hoppe and his stuff on his Habermasian, neo-Habermasian argument for liberty? And Polan said something like, well, Hoppe is a poor man's Gewerth. And when he said that, I stopped in my tracks and I'm sitting at my desk in Philly at an office, like talking to a guy in DC about liberty. And so you have basically a fellow anarchist libertarian criticizing his fellow anarchist libertarian for not being as good as Gewerth, who was Polan's advisor. But Gewerth was a socialist. So I'm like, why would you say that a fellow libertarian is a poor man's socialist? Like, even if you don't like his argument style or whatever as much, at least you're both libertarian. You know, something about that. And then later on, I learned that this was just all infighting. Like they should have been allies, right? They should have like supported each other and maybe had a conference together or a symposium, like try to combine their insights or learn from each other or something. But no, it was this demarcating territory kind of crap.
For a group of people that often like to like pride ourselves, whatever, on sort of individuality and that sort of thing, libertarians seem to be as prone to, if not maybe even more prone to, in-group mentality, where once you're whether it's, we see it today and with the Mises Caucus stuff, fighting with certain people, or these old feuds that go back decades, it's basically just reiterations of the same thing.
Yeah, by the way, I've seen the same thing with the Mises Caucus stuff. I mean, look, I love the Mises Caucus. I'm a supporter. I guess I'm a member. I don't know whether there's an official way you can find out, but I'm not quite sure that all the people that are members of the Mises Caucus even know who Mises is. I mean, from my experience with them, I'm really kind of mystified, to be honest, about how they got to be so popular so fast, because I would have thought that they were attracting the Mises Institute type people. And I think that might be 1/3 of it, but I think the rest is just people that I don't even understand, like, how you could be a member of the Mises Caucus and not even have read, you know, Mises and Rothbard and this stuff. But some of them apparently have. But anyway, my point is, I'm happy with them. They're growing. They're gonna improve over time or whatever. But in fact, we're having a Mises Caucus thing. Before I say this, when are you going to release this?
This will be released Monday, so that
okay, 8th. Fine. Okay, so today we're recording this on a Thursday. So on this Saturday here in Houston, we're having. So there's the Libertarian Party of Texas is having their annual convention or something at Hotel Derrick right down the street from my house. I'm here in the middle of Houston. And the special guest, Justin Amash, a congressman. And so the Mises Caucus Texas people, most of them don't want to go to it because they don't want to pay $250 to go hear.
They don't have enough wealth, power, and influence.
That may be it. Or maybe maybe
just the wealth.
Or maybe they don't go to the hotel there. Anyway, so we're gonna have at my country club right down the street called the Briar Club. We're gonna have a, what do you call it, a counter event, an alternative event. We're gonna have our own event at the same time, but it's gonna be equally as nice. But just people that are Mises Caucus people. So we're gonna actually have that. So I'm a supporter. All I'm saying is I'm a supporter. So what I'm saying is the hate I hear about the Mises Caucus is just ridiculous. And I saw this with the look. I'm a member of the Libertarian Party because Tom Woods and Dave and all these guys joined, and I've never been a member all these years. I said I've been voting Libertarian since 1988, I think, when Ron Paul ran the first time, or 86 it was. But I've never been a member until a couple years ago because I've always thought electoral politics is futile, and I still believe that, by the way. So I kind of agree with the criticisms of Erickson and these other guys about electoral politics, but I don't care. It's all futile. Like what you're doing is futile. So I don't mind fighting the battle on whatever fronts I can be part of and other people fighting on other fronts that I can't be part of. I don't mind that. That's fine. If you want to be part of the battle, but just don't delude yourself that you're going to win. Okay. Because if you start deluding yourself, or if that's the only thing that's important to you, it tends to result in people, they wash out, they burn out, they get fed up with it. Like, why did I spend all my time doing this Ron Paul bullshit? It didn't work. Like, because if you talk about short time preference, that's high time preference. It's like, you got to have a longer view and you got to have empathy for other people. So you do it for other reasons. Anyway, that's my own take on it. But the point is, this Libertarian National Committee thing when Karen Ann Harlos got ejected, which I think is a disgrace. I know her. I don't like her. She's amazing. And all these people that hate her, every single one of them, I think, should burn in hell. I mean, I don't believe in that, but, they're just completely immoral sellouts with no principles, no integrity. It's complete crap. That's my opinion.
It's something sad to see people conniving and scheming behind and doing sort of dastardly things to take control of a party that has no power whatsoever.
Correct. So I hope Angela McArdle wins in Reno next year, and they sweep, and all these moderate, toe tipping, finger in the wind, feckless, petty power assholes are gone. That's what I hope. But it's only because I don't think it really matters, because I think the LP still won't matter. But
yeah,
if we're
you hope for it in the way of just like a fun show to watch, like you'd rather see these guys win, and maybe
I hope for it as a matter of small justice, and also because the reason I joined about 3 years ago when Tom and Dave and all these guys did, I thought to myself,
a whole summit on this very podcast.
I've been telling people for 15 years, like, because every normal person you meet says, "Hey, Kinsella, aren't you a libertarian?" I'm like, and they think that means Libertarian Party. I'm like, I was always doing this thing where, well, I'm not a member of the Libertarian Party. I'm not a capital L libertarian, but I'm a small, like, I got sick of, I thought, you know what? These are my people. They're calling themselves libertarian. They're representing libertarianism to the people under this banner. So I'm going to join them and help them. And if I can, if I can support or push for if someone's out there calling themselves libertarian, at least they should be libertarians. Like, we shouldn't have Bob Barr or Wayne Allen Root or these lowlifes. Like, I mean, what the hell? I mean, Gary Johnson was barely acceptable. I mean, Bill Weld, really? Remember Jeff Tucker saying, "Oh, he's an old world gentleman." Like, I don't give.
Did Jeffrey say that?
Yeah.
No, Jeffrey's very charitable with things, so I can see that. One more thing, I just want to.
That's not charitable. That's not charitable.
Yeah, more than it's just making things up.
Anyway, so what I'm saying is the Mises Caucus people. So when they had that coup attempt in New Hampshire, it was obviously a coup attempt, and it was because these establishment types hate the Mises Caucus. Now, why do they hate them? I think it's just because of the name Mises, and they think it's got something to do with the Mises Institute. And of course, they're all racist, right? So I think it's something like that.
It leads back to the same thing. Well, Mises and Lou Rockwell to Rothbard to Hoppe, and everyone's racist.
Yeah.
So.
And so what I've come down to in my own life is like, I think this is one good thing about having financial independence, which I have. Like, if someone accuses me of something, I just say, F you, you're an asshole, walk away. I don't need to deal with you. I don't care if you exclude me from your country club. Fine. Or from whatever your circles are. Fine. I don't need you. You're an asshole. So I don't think you should back down, but I don't think you should, you don't need to like sit down and say, here's why I'm not a racist, because 1998 I helped the black.
Right.
Here's
a picture of me with this guy.
Yeah, I gave 2,000. My wife is half black, maybe. I was like, fuck that. It's like, no, you're a fucking asshole. Fuck you. I don't need you in my life. Go enjoy your miserable life as a parasite loser. I mean, but if you can but not everyone can do that, because some people have jobs, and they might get fired. Or they might get banned from Twitter or Facebook, and they depend upon that.
Even worse. That's worse than getting fired for a lot of people.
Banned from Twitter, Facebook. I've been hoping to be banned from Facebook and Twitter for a while. Anyway,
one more thing I wanted to ask you about, Stephan, is I was on Pete Quinones' show a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure if you heard that one or not, but we were talking about he was talking about kind of the post-libertarian stuff and the people that have sort of been asking questions about what the libertarian philosophy have done or what have you. And he mentioned to me that of all of the sort of like libertarian luminaries or intellectuals out there, the only person, or maybe one of the only people that actually reached out to him to ask him about it was you. That you reached out and just said like, what's going on with this post-libertarian stuff. So I'm wondering if you could just comment on that, on like what you heard that made you reach out to Pete, and like what your thoughts are about some of that conversation.
Because I've gotten to the point now where I'm so skeptical. I don't believe anyone anymore. Like, I don't believe I certainly don't believe the government on the COVID bullshit, but I don't believe libertarians either, because like they're right to be skeptical, but they say shit that is so outlandish. Like, so at this point, like, I don't know who to trust. I don't trust my doctor. I don't trust libertarians who say that, ivermectin work. I mean, I don't know. My point is I have a big skepticism, but I've always had the skepticism if you accuse someone of, if you hear on the mainstream media like X, Y, and Z is a racist, my immediate assumption is they're probably not, right? Because the standards have become so diluted now, and people use them politically. So when someone says, this guy Stephan you used to like, Pete, he's no longer libertarian, he's a post-libertarian. Like even Stephen Molyneux, like old friend of mine, haven't talked to him in a long time, but he and I are old friends. Over the years, people keep telling me, Molyneux is like totally changed to become a Trumper and he's a racist and anti-immigration. I don't know. I guess part of the problem is I'm not sitting there following these guys' daily posts all the time, like their followers or their haters are. So, but when people say, "Oh, he's a racist" or he's not a libertarian anymore, I'm like, I don't believe what you just said. It could be true, but I don't take your word for it. Like, what exactly did he say? What was the context? When did he say it? So I especially people that I know are somewhat libertarian or used to be libertarian, I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm not going to assume that they're not libertarian anymore just because someone who now hates them for some petty reason says. So yeah, so I just asked Pete. I said, like, I heard about this post-libertarian. Are you? And we may have a talk about that. I just talked to him this morning about it a little bit on direct messaging. So I'm curious to see what he thinks and what he says. And I've heard a little bit of the smatterings from these the debates that I just told you about this morning that I listened to in the last couple of days, because I'm just kind of curious. I'm getting curious. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm always curious about the neo-reactionary stuff, the post-libertarian stuff, the Curtis Jarvin stuff. Even some of the alt-right stuff. I'm just curious about it. I'm not going to become that, but I'm curious about it. And I want to know what's what and who's who. So I was curious about that from Pete. And, I think I learned a little bit, but I'm curious to learn more, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah, pretty much. I was just kind of curious what you were curious about. And I remember hearing a talk with you and him on his show, maybe a few weeks prior to that. And you're kind of talking about, some of these things that aren't cut and dry. Like, for example, when, let's say, the federal government institutes a mass vaccine mandate. Okay, all libertarians are opposed to that. But then maybe some states or some municipalities might put in their own thing saying, no, you can't do a vaccine mandate here. And then, a lot of people say, well, that's not libertarian. And, I might agree that it's not, but it's also like, okay, now let's pull out and look at the context of what's going on.
Correct.
Here. So
that was one thing I think he and I kind of went back and forth on Twitter on, because I simply made the observation, like the Ron DeSantis sponsored Florida law, which I don't know if it ever became law, but it was a proposed law. And then in Texas, there was a mandate and a proposed law, basically penalizing private companies in those states that ask their employees for proof of vaccination. Mm-hmm. And while as a normal human, I think that these companies are stupid for doing this and unwise, and while I think that the pressure that they're being subjected to do that by the federal government is completely outrageous, as a technical matter, the laws punishing an employer for doing it is unlibertarian. And the reason, I'm just stating obvious libertarian analysis. I'm not saying how the greater battle falls or like
sure.
I'm even sympathetic to like this general thing, but you can't just respond to that, which I think Pete did one time. You can't just say you can't bring a knife to a gunfight. It's like, okay, if you want to have a long discussion about it, but you can't just dismiss someone's concerns that a given proposal violates someone's property rights by just a stupid aphorism like you can't bring a gun to a knife.
That's kind of the nature of Twitter. It's going to turn into stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, are you saying that any means? I mean, the ends justifies any means. I mean, what exactly are you saying? And I'm thinking like, okay, what if I'm an employer? What am I supposed to do if I'm in Florida? The federal government's going to fine me with OSHA if I don't do this, and the state's going to fine me here. I mean, you're torn between two daddies. You know what I mean? I feel sympathetic to these companies. I don't know what they should do. I know what I would want to do if I ran one. I was the total owner of it. I would want to defy the federal government and, I don't know, pay the fines. I mean, what I said was, if you want to be really radical and ballsy and not pussyfoot around and not compromise your own principles, why don't you propose this? The state of Florida should have some balls and interpose and exert some nullification and say, any business in Texas, any individual in Texas, Florida, under our control and under our protection, we will protect you from any federal effects of any mandate. You don't have to have you don't have to have a vaccine requirement for your employees. We're going to protect you. Okay, that would be ballsy. That would take some effort. That might fail, but it would at least be something worth trying, and would be totally unobjectionable from a decentralist libertarian point of view, because it wouldn't violate the rights of any employer, and it would possibly help them protect them against the feds. But don't make the states the enemies of the feds. But again, I understand that you could have a debate. Like some libertarians think, fuck it, this is such a big issue. You just got to side with Florida because they're basically better. And, if some private businesses that want to have a vaccine mandate are harmed, that's collateral damage. Okay, if you want to argue that, that's fine. You can argue that. I don't have heartburn about that kind of argument.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, Stephan. Well, it's been awesome catching up with you. I think one thing about you is you have a lot of opinions. Some of them fall just within. We're talking about libertarian stuff, and some of them,
unlike other libertarians, I have a lot of opinions.
So you're a libertarian, basically. Yeah. It's been a blast having you on, man. Is there anything else you want to plug or mention before we stop here?
Soho Forum. Look up Soho Forum. I think .org or whatever it is. No. Yeah. They'll get this before the Soho Forum. It's November 15th. Yeah. So I'm debating Richard Epstein. If you happen to be vaccinated and you want to go, or you can do, this is
or if you happen to have some other piece of paper that might somehow.
Correct. If you want to cheat, or if you want to defeat the stupid control.
If you want to bring a $20 bill, ride the Darwin, whatever works.
But you could also stream it for $6, I think. So you can stream it. So you could, from the safety of your own home, you can support Gene's efforts without actually going to New York and supporting their vaccine bullshit. Soho Forum, look for the debate on November 15th with me and Richard Epstein on intellectual property.
All right, Stephan. It's always fun. Ever since the first episode, it's always been fun. Thanks a lot, Stephan. We'll talk soon. Keep up the great work.
Thanks, Mark. Bye.
All right, kitty cats. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with the great Stefan Kinsella, bringing back an oldie but goodie from all the way from the very first episode of Lions of Liberty. We got good old Stephan Kinsella back, and he certainly has some opinions, that is for sure. The only thing I will just say, I've known Jason Stapleton for many years, both in the podcast realm and personally, and I will just say, he's not shady. I will just say that he's probably one of the more forthright, open, and honest people I've actually had the pleasure to work with. So that's all I'm going to say about that. But some other friends of mine are those you're going to be hearing from a little bit later this week. Hopefully Brian has returned and emerged from his European adventure in Vienna with the Austrian something or other conference. I don't know. He'll tell you all about it on Electric Liberty Land, but he'll be returning this coming Wednesday while John Odermatt continues to pump out interviews like clockwork. He had an amazing one last week with Vin Armani, aka Cyprian. Got into some things that I don't think he has ever spoken about in any other platform before, so be sure to go back and check that one out. You get all 3 shows here each and every week on Lions of Liberty. 3 shows for the price of 1. That price is free. Just gotta take a little slap on that subscribe button. Get all these shows delivered right to your device. What a wonderful thing. And if you would like to support us more, head over to patreon.com/Lions of Liberty or lionsofliberty.locals.com if you are among the Patreon adverse. You got all sorts of bonus audio and video content there. You could have seen this interview live with Stephan Kinsella. We also have bonus shows like Conspiracy Corner, Degenerate Gamblers, Do Nothing Man, which they actually got a public preview of last week on the public feed, but that is typically behind the paywall for the patrons. You get it all for as little as $5 a month, more if you like, because there are plenty other options sliding up that scale. But for as little as $5 a month, you can give up a coffee, you can give up a beer to support your favorite podcast or this podcast, either one. One more thing I've got to mention. You got to come see me at Sayulita in Sayulita, Mexico at the Sayulita Super Spreader being put on by our friend Johnny Perfida of Peddling Fiction. This is going to be a freaking blast. Robbie the Fire Bernstein, Buck Johnson of Counterflow, Clint Russell of Liberty Lock Pod. We will all be doing live podcasts there. There will be a live podcast and a stand-up comedy set from Robbie the Fire. And guess who's opening from him? This guy right here. That's right, Marc Clair. Come check it out exclusively in Sayulita, Mexico. Head over to sayulita.superspreader.eventsmart.com. Get your tickets now. That's all I got, my friends. Until next week.
Live long and live free.